Hello, everybody. My name is Kim Trache, and I'm a dental therapist and board member with the BC College of Oral Health Professionals. I am of settler ancestry with roots extending to Germany, England, and Ireland. I grew up on Treaty 2 territory, which is now colonially known as Brandon, Manitoba. This is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg, Cree, Oji-Cree, Assiniboine, Dakota, and Dene peoples, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. I am joining you today from my home, which is located on the traditional lands of the Hulkaminam-speaking Snuneymuxw people. I would also like to respectfully acknowledge that the BCCOHP offices are located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish and Lekwungen speaking peoples, represented today by the Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, Songhees, and Esquimalt nations. I was delighted to be invited to open today with my dear friend and mentor, George Harris Jr. of Staminas First Nation. When I reached out to share about the opportunity with him, I explained the great significance of this, our first AGM of the BCCOHP. I told George about all the work that went into amalgamating 4 distinct legacy colleges: the College of Dental Hygienists of BC, the College of Dental Surgeons of BC, the College of Dental Technicians of BC, and the College of Denturists of BC, and how we have all come together to share in this important work. George and I pondered how we might offer you all an opening that was rooted in cultural significance, and he and I shared a light bulb moment. I invite my friend George to introduce himself to you and share a teaching with you today. Thank you.
Hi, Kim. Ichual, Anthopacho Koletza, Staminas. Good evening, everyone. My traditional name is Kokoletza. My English name is George Harris Jr. I'm calling to you today from my home here in Staminas First Nation. This is where I was born and raised. This is where my father is from. I'm honored to be able to share my English name, but more importantly to me, my traditional name with my father. I also have familial ties to Halalt First Nation, as well as Cowichan First Nation through my late mother, Sylvia Harris. It's an honor to be here with you tonight to share some of the thoughts and some of the teachings as we came, and Kim was sharing with me in regards to how this organization came to be, and with the 4 separate entities coming together to make one, that sparked a conversation and a thought of how our people functioned traditionally for getting around our waters, which was our highways. We had various sizing in canoes. We had smaller canoes to be getting around our local waterways. But when we needed to travel to make bigger journeys, there were larger canoes that were made. So, and when I was saying to Kim, you know, when we're having to make those larger journeys to more significant places, more people had to come together to be able to make that journey in a safe way. And so for me, in my mind, that really was very significant and very much came together and crossed paths with the journey that you're on. I just thank each and every one of you today for seeing that you needed to come together in order to make a more impactful journey that you're on. And I strongly encourage each and every one of you as leaders in your field to be keeping an eye out on the journey that you're on. Understanding where you need to go. You also have to look at where you came from to make sure that you're still continuing on the right path. And when Kim and I continued on in our conversation, you know, it was very reminiscent of a teaching that had come up, you know, when we're having to be in a canoe together. Is very reliant on the person at the back to be setting the tone, and those people are the leaders Those leaders are the ones who are keeping an eye out for the people in front of them, and they're also keeping an eye out if they're needing to make a turn. So those people in the back of the canoes are the leaders guiding the canoe where they're needing to go. And each and every one of you here today have to be able to guide your own practice and where you're going. Heichka.
Hi, thank you both so much for opening our meeting with that teaching, Kim and George. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon or evening, depending on where you are joining from. And welcome to the BC College of Oral Health Professionals annual meeting. My name is Melissa Mungal, and I'm the engagement lead at BCCOHP. And I'll be your host this evening as we make our way through a really packed agenda. So thanks again for opening the meeting with that teaching, Kim and George. It really enriches our understanding of our commitment as an organization to support the provision of a safe, effective, and culturally sensitive oral health care system for British Columbians. The theme of today's meeting is reimagined oral health care oversight. Many of you know that on September 1st, 2022, the BC College of Oral Health Professionals, also known as BCCOHP, came into being. A little over a year later, we are very excited to have you here with us today at our first annual meeting. I have a few housekeeping notes before we review our agenda and get the rest of the meeting going. So please note the following throughout the meeting. Your microphones are muted and cameras are off if you're attendees. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A panel to submit them. Please make sure that you send any questions to the default option so that it goes to everyone and doesn't get lost. So nothing specific to one person. If you did submit questions in advance of this meeting, we're so grateful, and we've pulled out the top themes and questions to ensure that they're addressed either indirectly through the content of the meeting or directly through the question period a little later in the meeting. We'll be doing a participative hands-on activity at the end of the meeting, led by one of our BCCOHP board members, Marian Erickson. When you have a moment, please grab a piece of paper, a pen or a pencil, and a pair of scissors if you can, so that you're ready to participate when the time comes. And as always, if you experience any technical difficulties during this meeting, please email communications@oralhealthbc.ca and flag your email as urgent. I'm going to quickly go over the agenda of the meeting now. We're going to start things off with a poll, and this will be followed by an address from our board member, Kim Trottier, who you just heard with George. And then we'll have a report from the BCCOHP CEO and Registrar, Dr. Chris Hacker. We're then going to welcome Anita Johnson, auditor with Smythe LLP, to report on the audited financials. Following that, Dr. Hacker, Registrar and CEO, and Joyce Johnner, our Deputy Registrar and General Counsel, will provide an update on the Health Professions and Occupations Act. Next, we've set aside some time for questions submitted to us. Then we'll have a short video presentation that explores the findings of our survey regarding providing patient-centered oral health care. And then we're going to welcome board member Marian Erickson for an activity at the end of the meeting. And finally, we'll share some closing remarks and conduct a short poll. But we're going to get into our poll for the meeting today. We're going to get started with our opening poll. We have a number of participants and speakers joining us for the meeting today, so I'll go into that first, and then we're going to go into the poll shortly after. On the screen with us today, you're going to see Kim Trottier, who's one of our board members. She was the one that helped welcome and bring you all into the meeting. There's George Harris Jr., who's from the Stuminus First Nation. Dr. Chris Hacker, who's the Registrar and CEO of BCCOHP. Anita Johnson, who is the auditor at Smythe LLP. Joyce Johnner, who's our Deputy Registrar and General Counsel, and then Marion Erickson, who's our board member. And you see all these people on the screen today, and you see them on the screen right now on our slide. So thank you so much, all of you, for being here. And we're going to get started with our opening poll right now. Attendees, you should see a poll pop up on your screen. The question asks a bit about who you are. This is going to give us a good sense of who's in the virtual room with us right now. So please fill out the poll when you can. We're going to put some soft overlaying music. I see that some people are already filling it out. I'll give you a minute. Okay, thank you so much to everyone who filled out the poll. We got a pretty good response rate. It looks like the majority of people in the room are oral health professionals. So that's really exciting. We also have some BCCOHP board and staff members here. And now I'm going to hand things back over to Kim Trottier. Kim will be providing remarks on behalf of the board today in her capacity as a registrant board member. She's a dental therapist who graduated from the National School of Dental Therapy in 2001 and has spent the past 8 years working with the First Nations Health Authority. Beginning in 2020, Kim served the College of Dental Surgeons of BC as both a board member and on the HR and Remuneration Committee. Prior to her work in BC, she was a dental therapist in Saskatchewan and served on the Saskatchewan Dental Therapist Council. Over to you, Kim.
Thank you so much, Melissa. All right, so today I am speaking to you on behalf of the board, and I'm standing in for our board chair, Carl Roy, who could not be here today. To each one of you joining us today, thank you for making this time to join the first annual meeting of the BC College of Oral Health Professionals. I sincerely hope that by the end of our meeting, you will have a better sense of who we are as a regulator and how we are demonstrating our vision of reimagined oral healthcare oversight. On that note, we have also reimagined what an annual meeting can be. Our goal today is to give you insight on the college's performance, respond to your questions and comments, and even do some learning together with more opportunities to come. The BC College of Oral Health Professionals is the province's newest health regulatory college, created from an amalgamation of 4 legacy dental regulatory colleges. It is governed by a 12-member board, including 6 members of the public and 6 oral health professionals. As the first board of the BCCOHP, we were individually appointed by the Minister of Health to govern this new college. It has certainly been a privilege to serve the public as board members of BCCOHP. It has also been a learning journey as we work together to establish, piece by piece, the various aspects of the governance structure that underpins a health professions regulatory college with a legislative mandate of public protection. I am deeply proud of the contributions of my fellow board member colleagues for their unwavering commitment to this work during a compressed time frame and for the unique perspectives each of them brings to our collective decision making. I also want to acknowledge the boards of the 4 legacy colleges who had the courage and foresight to bring those organizations to an end because of their belief that the public would be better served by a single oral health regulator. Of course, boards do not do all the heavy lifting. We are fortunate to have 100 public and professional members who came forward to serve the 10 regulatory professional standards and board committees. I offer my thanks to committee members for contributing your expertise and enthusiasm to your committee work. This in turn supports strong decision-making in the public interest and directly contributes to the credibility and quality of our collective work. As a board, we rely heavily on our Registrar and CEO, Chris Hacker, whose leadership ensures the board delivers on our mandate and who oversees all the regulatory and operational aspects of the college. Thank you to Chris and to each member of the staff for coming with us on this journey and for everything you have done and continue to do to build a resilient, innovative, and fit-for-purpose organization. One of the key accomplishments of the board this year was to lead the development of the BCCOHP's first strategic plan. Our mission is regulatory leadership that collaboratively builds public confidence in the delivery of safe, ethical, team-based oral health care. I hope you find that theme woven through the pages of our annual report, in this meeting, and within all of our activities. I would like to take a moment to highlight our 4 value statements. We put people first. We recognize that the most important resource in delivering our mission is the diversity and knowledge of people. We do what we say. We are committed to delivering meaningful outcomes for patients and the public, and to be transparent about our work and its impact. We get it done. We build credibility and trustworthiness through the quality of our regulatory work while approaching new challenges with openness and curiosity. And we take the long view. Through continuous improvement, we will use our influence to make a positive impact today and in the future. Our mission, our vision, our mission, and our values also underpin 3 areas of strategic focus: health equity and cultural safety to eliminate Indigenous specific racism that is prevalent in BC's healthcare system; regulatory leadership as we navigate the external forces of a modernized regulatory framework and a change in the legislation that governs us; and bringing together the core regulatory functions and professional and ethical standards that were established by the 4 legacy colleges, a step that is necessary for both those we regulate and for the patients and public to whom they deliver care. Finally, our aim from the start has been to create a truly new regulatory body for certified dental assistants, dental hygienists, dental technicians, dental therapists, dentists, and denturists in BC. Heading into year 2 of BCCOHP, we look forward to ongoing collaboration with our committees and working groups, oral health professionals, our staff team, the public, and health system partners to continue the momentum and deliver on the vision of BCCOHP. Thank you, and I will now turn it back to Melissa.
Thanks so much, Kim, for those sentiments on behalf of the board. I would like to now introduce BCCOHP's CEO and Registrar, Dr. Chris Hacker, to say a few words.
Thanks so much, Melissa. Hi, everyone. It's with great pleasure and a sense of accomplishment that we gather to present the first annual report of our newly amalgamated organization, the BC College of Oral Health Professionals. I'm grateful for your presence here today. We're dedicated to ensuring this gathering is as valuable to you as it is to us, and we truly appreciate your engagement after what I'm sure has been a day full of commitments. I also wanted to say a special thank you to Kim and George and to Marion, who you'll be meeting later, for helping to ground our meeting in such important First Nations teachings. Over the past year, we've embarked on a transformative journey to reimagine a culturally safe and humble approach to oral health care oversight for the betterment of the public and the oral health professionals we oversee. Today, in breathing life into the annual report, I have the privilege of sharing with you the progress we've made, the challenges we've overcome, and our vision for the future. I want to begin by mirroring Kim's words, shared on behalf of the board, and expressed our collective gratitude to those who are engaged with us in our mission of public protection. The creation of a single regulator for the oral health team was the culmination of more than 3 years of courageous leadership by the boards of the 4 legacy oral health colleges. Only a few of us are visible on your screen today, so it's especially important for me to recognize the many, many oral health professionals, members of the public, and staff who have selflessly contributed to this organization as it made its way through a momentous first year. Your contributions, big and small, have been critical to our successes thus far, and of course will continue to be. Just as we here at BCCOHP rely on a high-functioning team in order to regulate effectively, team-based healthcare and oral healthcare is continuing to gain profile as an avenue for achieving improved health outcomes through greater public safety. Safe, coordinated, patient-centered care delivered by a team of professionals requires collaboration and is foundational to the Ministry of Health's ongoing efforts to modernize the framework for health professions regulation and to ensure that all people residing in what is known as BC receive care that is free from anti-Indigenous racism and discrimination. This approach envisions healthcare team providers who understand a trauma-informed approach to oral health care, who are engaged in activities suited to their abilities, and who are supported in their practice according to the principles of trust and respect, effective communication, responsibility, and accountability among all team members. While the scope and role of the regulated members of the team are well known and understood, increasingly across all levels, healthcare is being provided by teams in which unregulated healthcare workers in assistive roles are a critical part of the staff mix. Often less credit is given to those unregulated workers, but we must begin with the assumption that all members of the care team have the required knowledge and skills to perform their assigned roles and will work together in a cooperative and coordinated fashion to achieve the best outcomes for their patients. As a practicing dentist for over 35 years, I was lost without the collaboration and support of both the regulated professionals and unregulated staff within our team, as well as the oral and other healthcare professionals down the hall and up the street. Perhaps not surprisingly, patients are acutely aware of these inter-team dynamics within a care facility as well. Patients value respect, agency, informed consent, safety, and comfort above all else. They see value in being supported by a coordinated, collaborative team working in a clean, safe environment that puts them at the center of decision-making, more so than the specific outcomes of the treatment itself. It's with these strategic aims in mind, I'd like to build out our work to date. And to that end, I'll describe and discuss an approach we've taken that incorporates the concept of the balanced scorecard, borrowed from the private sector, and crafted to evaluate and manage our performance across key areas. This approach strategically improves health outcomes through data-informed decision-making and allows us to report out on our performance in order to demonstrate our effectiveness as a regulator. The 4 perspectives or quadrants of the balanced scorecard, those of customer, internal processes, financial, and learning and growth, provide a comprehensive view of our organization's health and effectiveness. From the customer perspective, in the realm of oral health regulation, our primary customers are patients and the public and the oral health providers that we oversee. Through surveys, feedback mechanisms, and outreach programs, we've engaged with these communities of stakeholders to better understand their and your needs. We're proud to report already a significant increase in public satisfaction and trust in both our regulatory processes and the oral health professionals we oversee. Within this quadrant of the scorecard, we're implementing 2 new research programs to gather insights into the public we serve and the oral health professionals we regulate. The Voice of Dental Patient program is an ongoing study that explores public experiences and perceptions of oral health care and its regulation. The findings will be shared with oral health professionals and promise to refine the delivery of safe, competent, team-based care. The second research study gathers perceptions and insights from the 6 types of oral health professionals we regulate. The initial qualitative results from an online panel have shaped a broader survey launched in the spring of 2023, which many of you have contributed to. This survey covered a range of topics from registration processes to quality assurance and the delivery of team-based care. These initiatives will guide our regulatory efforts and stakeholder engagement. Additionally, we've been building a panel of oral health professionals that will be invited to participate in research engagements such as focus groups and online discussion boards. These will be administered by a third-party research firm, and the invitation to join the panel is currently open. Topics covered may include quality assurance, practice standards and guidance, health equity, cultural safety, and more. Please visit the research and consultation page on our website if you'd like to sign up. The second quadrant is internal processes. Efficiency and effectiveness in our internal processes are pivotal to achieving our regulatory goals. Our continued work in integrating our core regulatory functions will be underpinned and informed by a need for health equity and culturally safe and humble processes and care. Over the past year, we've implemented streamlined procedures, and our work on the integration of our digital platforms will soon expedite licensing and accreditation processes, with a goal to reducing administrative burdens on oral healthcare providers and improving oral regulatory efficiency. Earlier this year, and we thank you for all your patience, we navigated our first renewal cycle, covering over 16,000 professionals across 6 disciplines, licensing 6,672 certified dental assistants, 4,747 dental hygienists, 298 dental technicians, 4 dental therapists, 4,144 dentists, and 252 denturists. We've also maintained our commitment to public safety by responding to complaints. All current complaints, disciplinary, monitoring, and health matters that were handled by the legacy colleges were continued under the authority of BCCOHP. Detailed information about complaint outcomes is available in our annual report. Work has also begun on 3 complex strategic projects that include cultural safety and humility, standards and guidance, and quality assurance. Now that we are through our first year of stabilization, work will begin in earnest in weaving concepts of trauma-informed and culturally safe and humble approaches into all of our organizational work to ensure that the context of patients is being taken into consideration on both an individual and collective level. A single suite of professional and practice standards for all oral health professionals will be developed and consulted on. And finally, a reimagined quality assurance program that is consistent across all of our registrants, proportionate, equitable, and supportive in assuring the public that the oral health professional they engage is competent throughout their years of practice. Within the financial and risk quadrant, our financial standing is a crucial aspect of our organizational sustainability and the ability to fulfill our mission. I'm pleased to report that despite the challenges posed by the amalgamation, our financial position is robust. Our revenue streams are stable, and prudent financial management practices have assured stability. Further to this, BCCOHP's consolidated financials are available on our website as part of the annual report, and you'll be also hearing, as you've heard, from Anita Johnson of Smythe LLP during the upcoming auditor's report. Organizational risks have the potential to compromise our ability to protect the public if not properly managed. BCCOHP believes that everyone engaged with the organization has a role to play in effectively managing risk, and we're working to embed the behavior and culture necessary for risk management in all organizational activities and decision-making. Our risk management framework has been built over the past year, ensuring that BCCOHP has a systemic approach to identifying and mitigating risks. And finally, investing in our people and fostering a culture of continuous improvement are vital to our success. We've implemented professional development programs, training initiatives, and knowledge-sharing platforms to ensure that our staff remains at the forefront of healthcare regulation. The emphasis on learning and growth has not only enhanced individual competencies, but has also positioned us as leaders in the evolving landscape of health regulation. Our people quadrant has seen significant growth and change, as you might expect. We've unified 4 staff teams, welcomed new talents, and established a first board and robust committee structure. On a personal note, my own appointment as Registrar CEO came after an independent national search process at the end of last fiscal, and I'm honored to have been selected to continue the work of leading BC's second largest health professions regulatory college as part of this phenomenal team. In closing, as we reflect on the past year's accomplishments and challenges, it's crucial to look forward to the future. Our commitment to promoting and safeguarding oral healthcare delivery remains unwavering. We will continue to refine our processes, embrace innovation, and adapt to the evolving healthcare landscape. In considering our achievements, I'm pleased to report that we've forged strategic partnerships with key stakeholders, including patients and the public, healthcare providers, and government bodies, fostering collaboration for the betterment of the public's oral health. As mentioned, the ongoing implementation of our database merger has foreshadowed the use of cutting-edge technology that will not only improve internal processes, but will also position us as a forward-thinking regulator, adapting to the digital age. Our outreach programs have successfully engaged the public and oral healthcare professionals alike, allowing us not only to receive invaluable input and feedback, but also educating public audiences about oral healthcare expectations, preventative measures, and the importance of compliance with health regulations. The first year as a new organization has not been without its trials as well. The process of amalgamation posed unforeseen challenges. However, buoyed by our clarity on the vision of reimagined oral healthcare oversight, we've been able to successfully navigate these through effective change management strategies and communication. Despite our financial stability and strong position, you have my commitment we will continue to actively explore sustainable funding models to ensure our long-term viability and effectiveness. And in closing, I want to express my gratitude to the dedicated individuals who've contributed to our success, our board members and committee members, staff, healthcare partners, and the communities we serve. Together, we're building a regulatory framework that not only meets the needs of today, but anticipates the challenges of tomorrow. Thank you for your attention, and here's to another year of advancing healthcare regulation, and oral health in particular, for the benefit of all. Thanks, Melissa.
Thank you so much, Chris. You really brought the annual report to life with your remarks. As you said, we're really looking forward to another exciting year in oral health regulation. And for anybody who's interested, you can find our full annual report on our website, which is located at www.oralhealthbc.ca. So if you're interested in reading the annual report, it is up there. Now, my pleasure to introduce our auditor with Smythe LLP, Anita Johnson, who will report on the BCCOHP audited financials for the fiscal 2022-23 year. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Melissa, and thank you for inviting me to present our independent auditor's report. Our audit report begins with our opinion, which is probably the most important section for readers. And we are opining on the 4 statements that are included, which are the statement of financial position on March 31st. So that's a snapshot on that date. The statement of operations for the 7 months, the statement of changes in net assets, and the statement of cash flows. And we do report that the financial statements present fairly in all material respects, the financial position, results of operations, and cash flows. And this is in accordance with accounting standards for not-for-profit organizations. So while the opinion paragraph may be the most important paragraph for many readers, there are other sections of the report that I would like to talk about. And the next paragraph is the basis for our opinion. And in this paragraph, you'll note that we conduct our audit in accordance with Canadian generally accepted auditing standards. This year, there is a paragraph titled Other Matter, and that's simply in this initial year to report that the financial statements of the other legacy colleges were audited by other auditors other than ourselves for their prior year when they were operating independently. There are 2 other sections that I'd like to discuss, and those are the responsibilities of management and those charged with governance, followed by the auditor responsibilities section. So management is responsible for the preparation and fair presentation of the financial statements and for such internal control as they deem necessary for the preparation of the financial statements free of material misstatement. Those charged with governance, being the board, are responsible for overseeing the financial reporting process. As auditors, the final section details some of our responsibilities. Our overall objective is to obtain reasonable assurance that the financial statements as a whole are free from material misstatement and to issue our report in that regard. The section further details on a high level our risk-based audit approach, our level of understanding of internal controls relevant to our audit, our evaluation of the appropriateness of the accounting policies, estimates, disclosures, and overall presentation of the financial statements. And in conclusion, we do obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence in order to be able to provide our positive opinion. Thank you.
Thanks so much for that, Anita, and thank you for taking the time to be with us this evening and for providing us with that detailed look at the last fiscal year.
Thank you.
So we heard from many of you in advance that the Health Professions and Occupations Act is top of mind. So we wanted to set aside a special segment for it before the Q&A segment. So with that being said, right now I'd like to welcome Joyce Johnner, who's the Deputy Registrar and General Counsel of BCCOHP, as well as Dr. Chris Hacker, who's the Registrar and CEO, to provide an update on the new Health Professions and Occupations Act. Hi, Chris and Joyce. Thanks so much for joining. So we'll start off with a question, maybe for Chris. Chris, can you start by giving us some context on why the government is changing the legislation that governs all of the health regulatory colleges in BC?
Wow, so what a great question. What an in-depth question that could be. I'll sure try in a Coles Notes version. I think we understand, I think all of us do, that the government functions by being a lawmaker, setting laws through legislation that informs how society runs and are ultimately accountable to the public through election. And the oversight of healthcare generally. Regulation has been going on for over 150 years. In the late 1800s, the initial individual acts of the Medical Practitioners Act and the Dentist Act came into force, followed shortly by the nurses. And then through the 1900s, another series of individual acts were proclaimed. This sort of culminated in what was called the Seton Report at the end of the 1980s, early 1990s, that among many things was looking broadly at healthcare, determined that concerns lay with healthcare regulation in two main areas. One was a lack of consistency amongst the regulators at the time, who were all working under their individual acts, as well as a public concern of too much profession-centric oversight and influence in the regulatory processes. The government's response to that was the Health Professions Act that was proclaimed in the early 1990s, with a feeling that if everybody came underneath an umbrella legislation, that those concerns of consistency and profession-centric influence would go away. The following 20 years to 2009 saw all of the health professions, the regulated health professions in BC, coming underneath that act. Within that time frame, though, was a sort of a pivotal report from the ombudsperson at the time in the early 2000s, who, among many other things, was concerned that there was not enough consistency and too much profession-centric oversight within healthcare regulation, which is exactly what the Act was determining to prevent. So amendments were made and changes were done, and other reviews happened through the early 2010s. And as everybody knows, Harry Caton's report was released in 2019. And amongst Harry's findings were, of course, a lack of consistency among health regulators and profession-centric influence and oversight. So I think this piece of legislation is really the government's attempt to try to solve those two issues mainly, but two other things have been streaming alongside it, and one is, of course, the importance of an understanding of Indigenous health and the challenges Indigenous and First Nations people have in engaging healthcare and the poor health outcomes generally that are suffered by members of those communities. The Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples Act requires all provincial laws are brought into alignment with articles in the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples, and also the In Plain Sight report the following year that determines statistically those concerning outcomes. And I think the fourth factor in all of this has been the move towards team-based care that we've talked about before, the complexity of healthcare provision generally driving a need for patients to be seen by teams of experts rather than that old autocratic master whose idea of altruism was to tell the patient what they needed. Patients' expectations have changed, as so has healthcare in itself. So those concerns of lack of consistency, too much profession-centric oversight, wanting to weave cultural safety and humility, trauma-informed care into legislation, and finally oversight of teams rather than individuals has all driven this change.
Thanks so much for that, Chris. And it is a big piece of legislation. The Health Professions and Occupations Act is 278 pages. So before we touch on any specific changes, Chris, I'm wondering if you can talk a bit about maybe the guiding principles that are within it.
Sure. Yeah. Anyone familiar with the Health Professions Act, which is the act, and we need to remember we're still working under the Health Professions Act. This as we speak of the HPOA, and Joyce and I will probably get into this a bit more, it still is to be enacted. So it has been proclaimed, but it hasn't come into force. And you'll know in the HPA that broadly the mandate is set that we will work to protect the public. We will always work in the interests of the public. The problem with kind of measuring the effectiveness of regulation and also tailoring it comes from the broadness of that statement and the lack of sort of real focus of it. And I think what this new act has done quite well is it's gotten rid of that kind of fuzzy mandate, and it has based everything on what are called the guiding principles, as you mentioned. And these guiding principles are focused on everybody acting under the act, whether it be regulators, health authorities, other professionals as well. The guiding principles are somewhat hierarchical, but they all still stand on their own too, and they are composed of the very first statement, which which now says protecting the public from harm and discrimination. Discrimination absolutely is a harm, but the ministry felt that it needed to be pulled out and given special attention. And from there, we move through supporting and promoting awareness of reconciliation with Indigenous and First Nations people, and of course through UNDRIP and DRIPA. We move through taking anti-discrimination measures, including treating regulatory participants respectfully and identifying discriminatory practices as being another principle, and encouraging collaboration between regulators, again, wanting to get past that lack of consistency. Acting transparently and providing opportunities for public engagement. And the point of this is to bring the public in, not only in specific roles within oversight, but also to hopefully gain trust. Procedural fairness and respecting privacy are important, as well as removing barriers for health professionals seeking entry to practice from outside. But I think the key with all of these is that they can't contradict or oppose each other. And so if you take the first one, protect the public from harm and discrimination, comparing it to applying it when we're removing barriers for entry to practice, to take it to an extreme example, if we were to remove all of our standards for entry to practice and just let anybody who says they are an oral health professional practice, of course, that would be the ultimate in removing obstacles, but it would fly directly in the face of protecting the public from harm. So they all interact, and one cannot usurp another, if that makes sense.
Thank you so much for that. Joyce, I know it's not going to be easy to provide a summary of legislation this large, but I'm wondering if you can give us a high-level overview of maybe the key changes in the HPOA.
Sure. Yeah, Melissa, it is a big act, and a lot has been made about the HPOA being so large, and why is it so large. And it's important to know in that context, as Chris has provided you the sort of historical background, that that it contains within it the current Health Professions Act, and there'll be a lot of those similar provisions that are in the HPOA. So there's a lot that isn't new in the Act, and there's a lot that is carried over from the current Health Professions Act. What is new is really, as Chris noted, the anti-discrimination measures, and it's new because it's embedded throughout the entire legislation, that everything now will have that lens, and as Chris said, it's in the principles. So it's embedded throughout, and making, I think, the complaints process and other processes safer is a big part of all those changes. Specifically though, highlighting a couple of the main changes, there's an oversight body, and that stems from Harry Caton's recommendations. So there'll be a superintendent's office that's in the process of being set up already now, and that will oversee the regulatory colleges like us, ensuring that we do provide consistency, as Chris said. That's an objective of what the ministry is doing with this act, which of course is their act, right? So they're dealing with this act. We're just implementers as a college. And they're dealing with consistency, they're dealing with increased transparency, and trying to really set standards for good governance. There's also a big shift in the new legislation, moving away from elections, which is a part of the current Health Professions Act, but is not part of the Health Professions and Occupations Act. Boards will be fully appointed. They will still have a mix of professional and public members. They'll be smaller in size compared to what some of the colleges are used to. And they'll be really, I think, focused on a merit-based approach of competencies. And that's coming from appointments through the minister, through the superintendent's office. And then I mentioned the safer complaints process. One of the ways to also increase transparency is the new act will take the discipline process that's currently within colleges and take it and put it within the ministry and the superintendent's office. So any matters that have citations and are directed for discipline will no longer be dealt with inside the individual regulatory colleges, but they will be handled separately by the superintendent's office. So that's a very big change. And then the other aspect is with respect to this new concept of professional standards advisors. And I think the ministry, as they've consulted with the health regulators and other groups, have described this role as really still having the work of the profession come through in this way through professional standards advisors that the board must be consulting with. when they're dealing with bylaws or eligibility standards or ethics or other practice standards. So those are sort of the big main changes that I'll highlight, in addition to sort of having that context of the Act itself.
Thanks so much. One of the questions that we received in advance is about whether it's possible to make anonymous complaints. And I'm wondering, Joyce, if you can speak to that a bit.
Yeah, that is part of creating a process for a safer complaints process. And currently under the Health Professions Act, generally anonymous complaints aren't accepted, and it's more about fairness in terms of investigating the process. And under the HPOA, there will be an ability to create a process to accept anonymous complaints. And going with this is other powers, like giving the registrar powers that are clear about what the registrar can do to dismiss complaints, particularly if they're administrative in nature. And those aspects with respect from creating, I think, a streamlined process, but it will remove what I think we currently deal with as frivolous or vexatious complaints that aren't founded on anything. We'll get rid of some of those complaints through the registrar's powers, but really try to focus on avenues in which to accept complaints and create a process to deal with the oral health professional, whether or not the complainant wants to be part of that process or not.
Thank you. So last question that we'll have time for about HPOA right now is, we received some questions from oral health professionals about how the HPOA will be implemented, and specifically what the impact on oral health professionals will be. So Chris, I'm wondering if you can speak to this a bit. Chris, you're muted. There you go.
Of course I am. It's only been almost 4 years since COVID started. Thanks. Let's say, yeah. I'll split the question as you mentioned, and really the first one was about how it will be implemented. And of course, we still don't know the actual date of enactment. The act itself was given a royal proclamation, a royal assent in November of last year. But the ministry has indicated that it has a number of things in front of it. It has always indicated that the amalgamation of the remaining 11 colleges would happen first. And as everybody in the audience might know, that's going to happen in June of 2024. There's also an election scheduled for the fall, which will require an interregnum period and cabinet being dissolved. And so work won't be able to begin at the ministerial end until probably late fall. The act, it's assumed, will be around the beginning of summer, late spring 2025, but really it's up to the minister and cabinet, and certainly also if a new party comes in to power, who knows if that will impact things or not. But that's what we're planning for, that we're setting up a robust structure to allow BCCOHP to make the necessary changes to be compliant. And I will say, having gone through the amalgamation, so many of the especially the governance structures that are being called for in the new act, we've already structured. So we're well down the road on a lot of it. The BC Health Regulators, which is a consortium of all the existing health regulators in BC, is also structuring a project to help support the individual colleges in their own journeys towards compliance, understanding that, of course, once the amalgamations happen, there'll only be 6 regulators in BC. But I think we feel well positioned, not only from where we are now, but also in the structure that we'll take forward. So I don't see any issues that way, regardless of when the minister determines the act will come into force. The second part of the question also was about the impact on health professionals and oral health professionals. Certainly in the media, there was an awful lot of concern around the announcement of the act, the speed of which it was given royal assent, and the concerns expressed by probably a lot of professional organizations and associations of the impact on healthcare. I think it's really important to understand that these acts are about regulation, both the HPA and the HPOA. They're about how we regulate. It's about that toolbox, as Joyce likes to put put it, as to how we will do our work. I think anybody that has heard me speak before, certainly as Legacy CDSBC went through the Caton report, I indicated that it was about regulation, and the changes that were being recommended in the review were about regulation, not practice on the ground. As we moved into amalgamation, we stressed it was an amalgamation of regulators, not an amalgamation of professions. And as a result of that, again, coming out of the amalgamation, I'm hoping that our registrants haven't seen anything change in the way they provide care on a daily basis. And finally, with the HPOA, I would expect the very same thing. It's an act that is concerned with regulation and how we work, what informs our processes. And I hope, again, upon enactment of this act, all of our registrants really won't notice much change at all.
Okay, thank you both so much for that, that informative update on the HPOA. We're now going to go into the question period. We put out a call for questions earlier this month, and there was a really strong response. So in the interest of time, we themed them and focused on those that we feel are the most relevant to the broadest audience, including the public. So thank you to everyone who submitted questions. I'm inviting Chris and Joyce to respond to them. So if there's any time, we'll also try to get to some of the questions that are submitted in real time, but we'll get right in there now, if that's okay. So the first question that we have here is, what is the role of the regulator? How does that differ from the role of member associations and government? And I'll let Chris, you and Joyce, whoever wants to go first.
Great. Well, maybe I'll jump into this one, Melissa, if you'd like. I think starting with the healthcare system itself, and broadly defined, the healthcare system really is in place to improve health outcomes for everybody living in what we know as BC. Within that broad spectrum of care comes all the oral health professions providing care, health authorities, private fee-for-service offices, community-based clinics, all of those things that contribute to the health and well-being of British Columbians. I think as a regulator, it's important to know that we contribute to those improved health outcomes through our relatively small bucket of authority, which really just assures the public that the healthcare provider, in our case, the oral healthcare professional providing care at the treatment interface, is competent. And I think it's getting down to these basics and really trying to define our role. It really helps, I think, underpin our own work, but also define our relationships as well. And the three main ways that we ensure that competence at the treatment interface is by assuring that all oral health professionals are able to practice competently. And we do that through two methods: one, setting standards for entry to practice, and also for ongoing quality assurance and ongoing competent practice. We also assure that competence by setting expectations for the delivery of safe and patient-centered oral health care through our standards and guidance documents that at this point are really those that the legacy organizations have reported over, but we've spoken a little bit to that strategic goal of developing an umbrella standard suite of both professional and practice standards for all oral health professionals. And finally, of course, we investigate complaints made mostly by the public, but by also other members of the healthcare system, should concerns be raised about the individual practice of someone. So I think really, as a regulator, we do this authoritatively. We are incorporated under the Health Professions Act and will be under the HPOA to do this work. So the main difference, I think, between us and any other professional association is that we are authoritative, and we work in the public interest, working towards those standards. But I think it probably behooves me to say really quickly, coming out of the Caton report and looking at the way the HPOA is structured, and this concern around profession-centric influence tends to drive a wedge, I think, between the regulator and the professions that regulator might oversee, and when we've been no different there. But I think where we're also going is understanding that while the new act, the HPOA, is really signaling yet another move farther away from what we would term self-regulation that was prevalent 150 years ago, that we understand that our registrants self-regulate every day. And so while you can say self-regulation is something that doesn't exist anymore, I think we can say it actually absolutely exists day to day in every oral health practice across the province. And it's without that superb care that so many of our registrants provide, we couldn't protect the public. So I think we function by working in the public interest and assuring that practice is safe and competent, but we do that hopefully by supporting our registrants in providing that safe care. The associations, on the other hand, perform incredibly important functions for each individual profession in supporting the professions themselves, advocating for them, and providing, I hope, a real moral center for the professions as well.
Thanks so much, Chris. The next area, there are kind of a few questions that are in it, so maybe I'm hoping that you can kind of give an answer that maybe addresses a few of them. This is about BCCOHP's quality assurance program. So I'm wondering if you're able to provide a little more detail about BCCOHP's quality assurance program, when that final program will be ready, and will anything change with the existing QA requirements while we wait for that new program to be ready?
Sure. Joyce, did you want to jump into this, or would you like me to?
I can start, Chris, and then maybe you can finish, because you know, this was this is one of the big projects that BCCOHP is working on, is to deal with the fact that we currently have different quality assurance programs for the different oral health professions. And that's the reason for that, is because when we amalgamated, we didn't make changes to the existing programs. We just brought them all together under BCCOHP. And now that we're one college, we're going to work on how we deal with that and how we develop a new one. And currently there's 4 different, nothing should change for the different oral health professionals from what was in place when the legacy colleges were regulating the oral health professions. And now it's really a point of where we're going forwards. And here, Chris, I'll let you talk about that forward-looking step.
Thanks, Joyce. That's great. And I think too, you know, it's not just the inconsistency of the programs within oral health, but I think when you look broadly across the professions, the health professions, there are many different types of these programs as well. And this, again, you know, I think that probably the 4th or 5th time we've talked about consistency. But we're striving for that consistency within our own organization, and we know that certain cohorts of our own registrants now are more or less concerned about the programs in place. But I think to kind of go back to the comments I made earlier in the initial part of the meeting, I think we really want to try to reimagine what this is. I think there's a worry when we start talking about integrating quality assurance programs. For this example, they're sort of taking bits of each and sort of trying to put them all together. It's not what we're envisioning here. The working group will be appointed by the board, I think, coming up soon, and work will begin quickly. And it's about reimagining, and we use that word a lot, but it's really about how do we develop something new, not just parts of old. And we are going to strive for this program to be proportionate, equitable, and supportive in assuring the public that every oral health professional that they engage with is competent. But we are going to do that in a way that assures that everybody, every one of our registrants has that same program.
And I'll just add to that, Chris, that the new HPOA doesn't really give any more guidance on quality assurance. So if, as big as that act is, it doesn't really drill down into any of those components. So as regulators, we have to work that out. The only aspect that's added under the HPOA is really the anti-discrimination measures that are there with everything.
Thank you both so much. So can either of you tell me, what does BCCOHP have to say about challenges related to various members of the dental team? So for example, if staff shortages, a lack of respect for CDAs, unregulated members of the dental team, what do we have to say about those challenges related to the dental team?
Joyce, I'm happy to jump in here, and then please fill in. Wow. So this, yeah, concerns always around how different professions work together, and again, understanding that we are really about trying to bring teams together and kind of consolidate that oversight of teams to provide some continuity. We saw through COVID huge concerns, not so much in BC because of the collaborative work that the 4 legacy colleges did on the COVID infection prevention and control document, but in other provinces like Ontario, where the Dental Hygiene College and the Dental Surgeons College had completely different requirements at the time, and the concerns that created within offices where different oral health professionals were working together. We've talked in the past about how I'm sure patients would be incredibly surprised that prior to September 1st, 2022, when we amalgamated, that when they engaged their oral health care, if it was being provided in one of the many oral health clinics that employs a number of different professionals, that if they were going to have their teeth checked and cleaned and a night guard repaired, the 3, possibly 4 oral health colleges would have overseen that visit. And I think our hope when we talk about reimagining is trying to bring in all of those professions under an umbrella of expectations that are the same for everybody. And I think the reason for that is because really at the end of the day, we manage risk for patients who are engaging care. And we understand that risk in oral health care is shared by the whole team. And this is where the unregulated members of the team come into play as well. And I think record keeping is a classic example of that, where confidentiality and precision are key. And that record is initiated in most offices is by someone who is unregulated, and then it moves through the office. And I would be surprised if anybody within the office did not touch that record. So our hope is to begin to try to look at risk, focus our energies and actions on where it is. And we're doing, in hoping so, we can kind of communicate that everybody in the team has equal input into these areas of risk. And if we can create that flat hierarchical structure that is conducive to positive team culture, then we can create safe spaces in practices.
Thank you so much for that, Chris. And speaking of safe spaces, our next question is related to complaints. So how can someone submit a complaint without fear of retribution? Will there be an anonymous reporting tool? And can we maybe start off with that?
Sure. And I kind of touched on this a little bit already with the HPOA, because there's changes around a safer complaints process under that new legislation, but our current legislation really doesn't have the same mechanisms. And currently BCCOHP really doesn't take anonymous complaints. Now, if you have inquiries, we have many of our staff are answering inquiries either through our online portal or through calling and talking to people, and we do our best by managing and listening in that upfront work. And then if there are complaints, the fear of retribution is an issue, and we try to balance that with making sure that we are investigating the conduct of the oral health professional, and in order to do that, we do want to share with them the complaint that we receive. We ask for their response, and we share that response with the complainant. And that's the fair, transparent process that we manage at this time. There are opportunities where people have provided information to us as a regulator, and we bring our own motion investigation. That being said, it's not really anonymous, because the person who gives us that information is still included in the documents that are provided in our investigation. It's just that they're not necessarily asked to continue to respond to whatever position the oral health professional provides us. So there's a couple of ways in which we can still listen as regulators to what people's concerns are, allow people to bring an open complaint, and we raise those issues with the oral health professional in our investigation, or we may bring our own motion investigation as a regulator.
Thank you so much. Thank you both for the time. That's actually all the time that we have for the question period. So we will move on now, but thank you so much for answering those questions. Really appreciate it. We're going to move now into a short video presentation. This is going to be about the findings of BCCOHP's recent patient and oral health professionals research. So we're just going to share that on the screen. The video should pop up shortly, and then I'll pop back in shortly after. Thanks.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Nichols, and I'm the Senior Manager, Policy and Projects at the British Columbia College of Oral Health Professionals.
And I am Jessica DeVries, the Director of Program Development from Pivotal Research. We are excited to introduce our upcoming webinar where we dive into the revelations from our dual research endeavors, a comprehensive survey with oral health professionals, and our in-depth voice of patient study. Together, these studies unravel the delicate interplay between team-based care delivery and patient-centered care perceptions, offering a unique perspective on the synergy that fuels better healthcare outcomes. During our exclusive webinar, we explore what truly matters to patients, moving beyond clinical expertise to uncover the nuances of patient satisfaction. Discover the key that not only boosts retention, but also cultivates an exceptional patient experience, setting the stage for great recommendations.
But wait, there's more. In addition, we will explore related themes, including the new Health Professions and Occupations Act, anti-discrimination and cultural safety, and the Quality Assurance Program. The webinar will take place on December the 4th from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific time. Please keep an eye out for your invitation to register for the webinar.
That was great. Thank you so much. I hope that everyone considers joining the upcoming webinar. It's on December 4th. That's a Monday from 5 to 6 p.m. Pacific time. It looks like some informative content will be shared, and as Steph mentioned in the video, some details will be coming out on how you can get involved and sign up for that webinar soon. So we don't quite have that on our site yet, but it will be up soon, and we'll send you some information on it. So now we're going to shift gears. I would like to welcome Marian Erickson, who is a public board member at BCCOHP. I'm going to remind you now that you'll need your pen, some paper, and some scissors for this next segment with Marian. So please grab those now if you didn't earlier. While you do that, I'm pleased to tell you a little more about Marian. She's the research manager at the Health Arts Research Center at the University of Northern British Columbia and holds a Master's of Education and a BA in Public Administration and Community Development and an Applied Business Technology certificate. Additionally, Marian serves on the Doulas for Aboriginal Families Grant Program Advisory Circle. Marian has worked with the First Nations Health Authority and BC Cancer to release a set of Indigenous cervical cancer screening materials that are intended to bring awareness to the public and health professionals about how intergenerational trauma can impact Indigenous women's access to healthcare. Thank you, Marian, for agreeing to lead us in a short exercise, and I can't wait to see what we're going to be doing with these supplies. I will invite all panelists and speakers to please turn your cameras on now so you can follow along with me during this exercise. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that great and very long introduction. I promise I do have time to have a life. Like she said, so Hadi, Marian Erickson Sahatni. I thought I would just start off by changing our mood a little bit by teaching you some really great DACA stuff. So I'm from Dakish territory, and for those of you who don't know, that's in the central interior of northern BC. So right now I'm located in Prince George, which is at the confluence of the Fraser rivers. So I figure we could start off by just getting a little bit silly. So in my language, we say hadi, which means hello. So I also teach Dakish language here at the University of Northern BC. So that's why we're going to do this. But it will help. So everybody say hadi. Good. Okay, now say it really fast. Hadi. Now you just said, aha, I found you. And then now say it really slow, but in a deep voice. Hadi. That means, aha, I caught you, you're lying to me. Okay, thank you. As she mentioned, I do teach Dakish language here. So my name is Marian Erickson. I am from Nakasley. My mother is a teacher and my father is an artist. I just so happen to have become an artist that teaches. I'm a public member of this college, and being a public member brings unique opportunities and challenges to my participation on the board. And I also just like to mention that I'm here through insurmountable odds. So as an advocate for oral health, I'm also the granddaughter of a residential school survivor. And today I just want to bring your attention to critical issues that goes beyond the realm of dentistry and strikes at the heart of humanity. And it's the enduring impact of anti-Indigenous racism in healthcare. And particularly today, we're going to deal with racism within oral healthcare services. And I know that sounds uncomfortable, but it's okay because we're going to do it through art. So my grandfather was a residential school survivor. He endured unspeakable horrors during his time there. And among the atrocities inflicted upon him, one that stands out is the vicious removal of his teeth at Cooper Island Residential School. This cruel and inhumane act went beyond mere dental procedures. It was not an isolated incident. Rather, it's part of a pattern of behaviors that happened to many residential school survivors, including in Dakish territory at Lee Jack Residential School. This was an assault on Indigenous identity, culture, and overall lifelong well-being. And there are still survivors from residential school that live today with no teeth because of their experiences at residential school. The repercussions of such trauma have echoed throughout generations, including my family, who many of us do not like going to the dentist because oral history has told us that it is not a safe place. And it doesn't have anything to do with current practitioners, but rather it has to do with the history and legacy of residential school. So a lot of Indigenous individuals continue to face systemic barriers and discrimination within the healthcare systems, including oral healthcare services, from biases that affect diagnosis and treatment plans to cultural insensitivity and the cycle of past trauma. And at this moment, when we stand in a new college, we're at a critical confluence. And it's imperative that we acknowledge the role of healthcare providers play in perpetuating and dismantling these systems of oppression. And I think that in a big way, a lot of oral healthcare providers are working towards dismantling and trying to work towards dealing with bias and things like that to improve healthcare. And so I come to you with a solution that is rooted in evidence-based practice. So studies suggest that incorporating arts-based learning activities into healthcare education can enhance cultural competence among providers and healthcare leaders, which I'm really glad that we have healthcare leaders here as well. By engaging in activities that encourage empathy and understanding, we can bridge the gap between different cultural backgrounds and improve the quality of care. Arts-based learning offers a unique opportunity to humanize the stories beyond the patients, as well as your own stories. And I really love this quote by Richard Wagamese, who says, the truth about stories is that's all we are. And I really love that. So some of you may have gone ahead and started trying the origami pamphlet because you're a bit terrified that you're not going to that you're not going to do it right. But I promise you, we've done this before with healthcare providers. We had a heart surgeon do this, and he had a hard time. And it was terrifying for him. But you are all going to do a really great job, I promise. So I put mine like this. I put marks on it. This is just so you can see. Yours does not need mark on it. Grab any piece of paper that is about the size of printer paper, and we're going to make a one-cut book. So as per the instructions, you need to fold your paper hot dog style. Okay, hot style. No. So this is the long way. Okay, so should see how it could be a hot dog. Now open it back up and fold it hamburger style. Okay. All right. Now it doesn't have to be perfect. So don't stress too much if it's not perfect. All right. How's everyone doing? They got it? Okay. Now we have to make a gate. So, yeah. You are going to fold it in to the middle, you see, towards that middle line, and then it should make a gate. Everybody have their gate? If I can get people to show me their gate when they have it. Okay, now with this gate, I want you to just bend it this way, and you should have a bird, or yeah, just like a little bird this way, see? Everybody's got their bird. Okay, now this is where we break the bird's little back. So we just cut it right here. And for those who don't have scissors, don't worry, you can just rip it. I didn't bring scissors because I knew other people wouldn't. So but don't cut it all the way down, just cut it to the wing of the bird. So it should be just halfway, yep. Now you can fold it down and it can make an X, as we see here. And you can just fold down these little things here, all right? Does anybody need me to back up? Everybody's okay? All right, and then now you can just fold it together, right? There we go. Awesome. Okay, so I'm gonna make you draw and I'm gonna make you write. So if you're not an artist and you're not like a poet, this is gonna be really easy for you because it's gonna be perfectly fine. So we're gonna make a title for our book. So the title of the book is going to be, I want you to think about a time. Now, don't write your title too big because I'm going to get you to write 5 words around your title, okay? Now, I want you to think about a time when you weren't at your best, when you treated someone poorly. So for those of you who are health care providers of some sort, please pick a patient. And if you are in a leadership position, then you can pick somebody who works with you or that you've had to work with. But think about a person that you may have treated poorly, and name your document after their first name and something that they were wearing. So if it was me, I would say Peter and his blue hat. So that's going to be the title of your document. Okay, just give me a thumbs up when you're just so that I know people are doing good. All right. Now, around Peter's name, I want you to give 5 words that describe your character. Sorry, not everybody's had a conflict with Peter. Yeah, so five words that can describe the person for which you may have treated poorly because you weren't at your best. Okay. Now we're going to draw. I know for some people that you're not going to want to draw, but that's okay because we're going to do it with your eyes closed. So this is called blind contour drawing, and artists have used it for a really long time. So what I want you to do is I want you to put your pen in the middle of your page. And I want you to close your eyes and go back to that difficult person and the time you shared together. Now, everybody has to close your eyes, pen on your paper, right in the middle, go back to that difficult person and the time you shared together. I want you to walk back in your mind in that room and take a look around. And I want you to think about an object in that room now and draw it with your eyes closed. Now, this can be any object that's in the room with that person who you've had a conflict with or that you treated poorly when you weren't at your best. And I want you to think about that object, and I just want you to draw it as big as you can on the page. Now, around that object, I want you to draw some of the emotions that came about during that conflict, whether it was anger or even feelings that your body had, like were you tired? So just draw any of those, however you like, on your paper. It could be scribbles, it could be just any way how you would draw an emotion. Okay, now usually you can open your eyes now. Usually we would have like a dialogue at this point, but because you would be able to share your drawing. So if you want, you can share your drawing with people, for the people up here, but if you don't want to, that's okay. And so this activity, wow, you did a really good job, Kim. Now, this activity is meant to bring your mind back. So now you have a very well-primed mind to go back to that situation. And now I want you to write this story new, with a different ending. And think about how you would have changed the situation so that the outcome when you weren't at your best wasn't as bad as it was. I want you to write a good ending to this story, whereas it may have been a very challenging situation that you regret at this point. Write the story again, but you are not allowed to use any of the 5 words that you put on the title. Okay, I think people are slowly starting to look up, so their story is almost done. And I think we have one last page at the end, right? Okay. So in the final chapter of this book, I just want you to write something that you learned from this situation, and one commitment to yourself, because these difficult situations are always learning opportunities. And so you can write one commitment to yourself, and one like strength about yourself. Sorry. So okay, this is great. I think everybody's almost done. And so I just wanted to let you all know that what you are engaging in is a form of what's called reflective practice. And it is it's been very well documented that reflective practice improves people's practice as healthcare providers. And there are a lot of other ways you can engage in reflective practice on your own, whether it be journaling, which is pretty common, and things like that. Some people will share blogs about how they improve their practice, lessons learned. I've seen people have like Facebook videos and things like that. So these kind of activities are just something small you can do to improve your practice. And it's something you can do at home by yourself. And when I think about the history of Canada and where we're at in terms of truth and reconciliation, before I used to see it as it was always us versus them. But now I see it in a much bigger and different way. And it was a missed opportunity to collaborate knowledge, is what it truly was. It was a missed opportunity that we are working on now, that we're bringing people together. And I think about this college, and I think about all of the healthcare providers that are coming together into one big college. Those kind of things, it's the same kind of experience. Relationships go through ebbs and flows. And that's what we're engaging with now. It's the coming together of knowledge. And when I think about Indigenous knowledge, my dad kind of explained the way Indigenous knowledge is just a little different than Western knowledge. He said when Western knowledge came here, that one of the philosophies is, I think, therefore I am. And I remember being a little girl and hearing that. And I thought it was so interesting because I had just learned how to think and I was really small. So I thought it was really cool. And my dad said the Indigenous version of that is all my relations, therefore I have wisdom. And he said the difference between that is that it's more collective rather than individual. And I thought about it for a long time, and I had to think about knowledge in the way that Dakish language works. Knowledge, you can't have knowledge because it's not a noun in the Dakish language. Knowledge is a verb. It's something that somebody is being, that your spirit is being. And it's also something that you share. And sharing wealth, in the Dakish way of knowing, we don't, in our way of understanding wealth, it's what you give away. And that's been one of the biggest underlying conflicts that has impacted the history of Canada, is this different ideas of wealth. But I think we can get to a confluence in the future of this country, in the future of this province, in the future of nation-to-nation relationships with First Nations people. And I think it can start in really small ways. I had one of the local dentists in Fort St. James had a card on their to advertise for dental care, and it said, because tsungi, which is the Dakas word for moose meat, won't chew itself. And I thought, what a great way to attract Indigenous patients to his office. For one, he took the time to figure out how to say like moose meat. So for those of you who don't know, a tsungi is actually dried moose meat, and it's actually really hard to chew. And also we get a lot of chipped teeth from accidentally chewing on bits of bone. So I just love that. And I thought that was a really great way to bring dentistry and reconciliation together, like in a very simple ad. And so I just thought I'd share that I really like that. And yeah, I just want to thank everybody for participating in that. And I think I'll stop talking now. So thanks.
Thank you so much, Marian. That was such a thoughtful activity, and we really appreciated having you lead that. So thank you for stepping in and doing that. We've covered a lot of ground this evening, so thank you so much, all of you, for joining the meeting and taking time out of your day to be here with us. Moving forward, we're going to have more engagement opportunities, and I hope that you'll all consider taking part in them too. I'd also like to thank all the speakers and the planning team who put in many hours to help plan content that is useful, informative, and responsive to audience interests. A recording of this meeting will be posted on BCCOHP's website, and I'd like to ask you all to please stay for a few moments after the close of the meeting, as we have a short exit poll that we hope you'll participate in. This officially concludes the 2023 annual meeting. Thank you again and have a great evening. We're going to pop the poll up on the screen now. Thanks.